Hey everybody, in this video we're going to create a practice program in JavaScript to convert some temperatures using some HTML elements. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Okay, let's begin everybody. Before we add HTML elements to our DOM, let's work on the logic behind the functions. Let's declare and assign variable temperature and set this equal to some temperature. Doesn't matter if it's Fahrenheit or Celsius yet. And at the end of our program, let's declare two functions. Function toCelsius, and there will be one parameter, temperature, and function toFahrenheit. The formula to convert a temperature in Fahrenheit to Celsius is our temperature minus 32 times 5 divided by 9. The formula to convert Celsius to Fahrenheit is return temp times 9 divided by 5 plus 32. Let's say that our temperature is currently in Fahrenheit and I need to convert this to Celsius. I will reassign temp equal to, and I will invoke the toCelsius function and pass in my temperature. Then at the end we will display whatever our temperature is. Console.log temp. So the temperature should be 0 degrees Celsius. If we're converting this to Fahrenheit, then 32 degrees Celsius converted to Fahrenheit is 89.6 degrees. Now that we have the logic behind these functions completed, let's add some HTML elements. Heading to our HTML file within the body tags, we will create a label. Then close it. And I'll add a line break. For some text, let's add enter a temperature. Then we'll create a text box. So use a self-closing input tag. I'll create a line break. The type is text. The ID, let's say, is textBox. Let's create a second label. Label. Close it. Add a line break. We will add the text convert to : we'll create two radio buttons. Input type equals radio. So with a radio button, if they're in the same group, you can only select one. This first radio button will be for Celsius. We'll give this a unique ID of cButton for Celsius. Name unit. Let's save. There's one radio button, and we'll add a label next to this radio button. Label. Close it, add a line break, and the label will be Celsius. Okay, let's copy these two lines and paste them and make a few changes. This will be the Fahrenheit radio button. We'll give this an ID of fButton. The name will be unit, and change the label. Fahrenheit. Since these radio buttons are within the same group, they have the same name, we can only select one of them. If they had a different name, like C or F, well then you can select both of them because they're in different groups. So these will have the same name, unit. Let's create a submit button right at the end. So button, let's close it, add a line break. The type will be button. And the ID is maybe submit button. Let's add some text to this button. Submit. I'm going to close that. At the very bottom of our DOM, let's add a label that will display the temperature. Use a pair of label tags. I'll give this an ID of tempLabel. And those are all the HTML elements that we'll need. Let's save, head back to our JavaScript file. When we click on this submit button, there's a lot of things that we need to do. At the very top of my program, I'm going to type document.getElementById. The ID of this button is submitButton. onclick, and I will set this equal to a function, parentheses, curly braces. There's a lot of lines of code that we're going to add between these curly braces. So let's get rid of these 3 lines of code. We don't need them any longer. I'm going to declare a local variable within this function, let temp. So when we click on our button, let's check to see if one of these radio buttons is selected. Let's begin with the Celsius button. If document.getElementById, and the ID of this Celsius button is cButton. We need to check to see if this radio button is checked or not. So add .checked. If this equals true, but since this is a Boolean value, you don't need to necessarily add equals true. Document.getElementById cButton.checked. That's fine as a condition. If our Celsius button is selected, do something. Else if our Fahrenheit button is selected, do something else. Let's copy our condition, paste it. This time we are checking the Fahrenheit button, that is fButton. And lastly, else. Else means we didn't select anything. Let's work on the else statement first. That's fairly easy. So I would like to change our label that's down here at the bottom, tempLabel. So type document.getElementById tempLabel, and I will change the inner HTML. I'll set this equal to select a unit. If I were to click on the submit button, it should change the text of my label to select a unit. We know that it's working. If we enter in a temperature, press the Celsius radio button, then click submit, what would we like to do? Let's extract the temperature from this text box. So we will take our temperature variable, set this equal to document.getElementById, and the ID of this text box is textbox dot value. When we accept user input from a text box, it's of a string data type. We'll need to convert that to a number. So let's reassign temp equal to, use the number constructor and pass in our temperature. It's assumed to be in Fahrenheit if we would like to convert to Celsius. Let's invoke the toCelsius function. I'll reassign temp equal to the toCelsius function, invoke it, and then we need to pass in our temperature. After the temperature is converted, we need to change our label. So copy this line of code, paste it, and I will set this equal to temp plus, if you're writing this code on a PC, if you need the degree symbol, one shortcut is to hold Alt, and on the numpad, press 0176. If you're on a Mac, then do this. I'll post it on the screen right now. So this temperature is in Celsius. Okay, let's test this. 32 degrees converted to Celsius is 0 degrees Celsius. If this was 50 degrees Fahrenheit converted to Celsius, that would be 10 degrees Celsius. Now with the Fahrenheit radio button, let's copy everything we have within this if statement, paste it, and we will invoke the toFahrenheit function instead of the toCelsius function. And change the temperature from C to F. Okay, let's try this. 0 degrees in Celsius converted to Fahrenheit is 32 degrees Fahrenheit. So yeah, that was a practice project to convert temperatures using JavaScript. Hey, if you found this video helpful, please be sure to smash that like button, leave a random comment down below, and subscribe if you'd like to become a fellow bro.